Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Titan HST webinar series. And I'm excited to have Dan Scott and Jake Wolf both here. Dan Scott is emergency manager from Hartnell College Community College District. Has great experience when it comes to both public safety and higher education public safety. And so he's done across the board. And Dan also runs a very successful seminar series that he puts out. So we can talk more about that later. And also with me is Jake Wolf, who is the emergency manager for the California State Department of Education. And again, a very experienced emergency manager working at all levels of government. And Jake is very passionate about emergency management and specifically passionate about really bringing emergency management also to not just schools, but also to worship houses of worship is the best way to say it. And he works on that level as well, which is really important because in general, we're talking today about building a cultural preparedness, although we are putting it into the context of education, just because we are getting ready to go back to school here in the next couple of weeks. My daughter starts on the 15th. So she's in grade school, but it's almost like she's in college in the way they run their programs. So school is definitely start. And you can always tell when school is starting because you go to Target or to Staples and they have all the back to school specials up and the commercials start to go and get hilarious, which I love to tease my daughter about because I'm like, oh, look, everybody's excited about getting back to school. And she'd like to have her summer vacation last a little bit longer like most of us. So how do we, I think a general question, I'll start with Dan. How do we perpetuate a culture of preparedness, and especially when it comes to our students and faculty and staff at schools?
Well, with me, one of the biggest beliefs I have when it comes to developing a culture is a level of consistency that we bring to whatever program it is. You have these preparedness months like September, and it's important to really address those and trying to utilize those to benefit for whatever your organization is that you represent, and utilize that in the best way you can. But you got to be in front of people on a consistent basis to really build the culture, the mindset to change that understands why it is that they need to be prepared and what steps they can take in order to be prepared and why being prepared is beneficial to them. And so it's a level of consistent engagement, which Todd is an area that I'm really passionate about, is growing the ability of emergency managers to really become marketers, to market what it is we do all the time. And it's difficult with when you're dealing with students and working in schools because there's turnover. You got new people coming in all the time, and you got people going maintain that level of consistency in order to establish a culture is important.
So Jake, same question to you, but put the hat on with I'd like to talk about high schools a little bit right there when it comes to that. I think the little kids are easier to manage, but when you start about like junior high to high school, how do you create that cultural preparedness to where it's a cool thing and not a nerdy thing, for lack of a better term, for the students to really get involved with?
Let me start out by saying thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate it. And I really hope that your COVID symptoms go away for good. So I'll try to send you orange juice or some soup or something to try to help out with that when I get around to it. High school it's a tough situation because there's so many different types of high schools. When it comes to identifying the culture of preparedness that you currently have, taking a step back and looking at what your environment currently looks like, I think it's an important concept to understand that every school is different. Every school climate is different. Every school has a different level of threat from different areas. Our mind always goes to active shooter. I don't think that's fair. I think that there's so many different threats that are out there that we need to consider. And when you're talking about approaching high school kids, really, you need to start from within. And it just with the comprehensive planning guidance 101 lays out how to engage your stakeholder group and create a plan, and ensuring that your plan represents the current process that you have. That culture should be embedded in that plan and in that planning process. You have a culture in your school, whether you know what it is or not. The culture exists. The question is, how do we tap into that culture, and how do we inject preparedness into that culture, and to help kids not only become more prepared for disasters, but become resilient in general, because there's a lot of horrible threats and a lot of horrible things that are happening out there in society. And if we can be able to align ourselves with our student population to help them understand that resiliency starts with you and really embedding that into the culture, I think is taking that angle and approach would probably be more successful for folks.
Now, there are school programs I've seen across both the higher education and K through 12 where you're putting disaster kits into the classroom. I know at the higher education level, it's a little harder because teachers, professors do not own their own classroom necessarily, where like a K through 12, it's their classroom. It's like their office, their home for the semester or for the year. What does that look like when, and we'll talk about staff here right now and faculty. How do we now turn that to faculty and staff? How do we get them excited about cultural preparedness and really taking it seriously, not just going through the checkbox? Either one of you guys.
Yeah, I'll let Dan go first. Go ahead, Dan.
When it comes to the faculty and staff, it's the level of engagement as well, but because with your faculty and staff, it's a little bit easier because you don't have as much turnover. And even though they may not own their classroom, they have that shared space, and knowing that what training and what equipment's available is important as well. So having consistent training and engagement with them and employee onboarding process is always beneficial to let them know what policies, procedures, and guidelines are put in place, and what tools are there to accept them, and acknowledgement that they understand where things are. The level of regular compliant checks, meaning checking batteries, checking expiration dates, and all that stuff, also allows you to interact with people and let them see you as well, maintaining whatever specialized equipment there is. But more than that, it's a level of training. When new employees come on, you want to make sure that they're oriented, they're trained, but it's a level of consistent regular training that keeps the regular employees and faculty and staff engaged in the process and understanding that you're not just one and done and take a training and expect to be able to respond accurately in an emergency situation. But it's more than just being able to be prepared for an emergency or a disaster. Being prepared is in itself a large scope. And when you talk about being prepared, got to be very specific on what you're asking people to be prepared for, because it may not be an emergency, but being prepared is essential for how we will do things if it takes place, like a power outage. It could turn into an emergency, but odds are the power outage is not an emergency, but it can affect everything you do with teaching in the classroom, doing your work. If you're whether you're a staff or an employee, a teacher actually teaching, but whether you're a student actually being able to get on the internet and access the tools and the programs and the networks. And as an employee, I've experienced this where power goes out and I don't have access to the network, which is where all my work resides. So I can't do work without access to the network. So these are things that not necessarily be an emergency, but they are things that will affect how you can either do your job or learn as a student. So it's understanding to a level of what you're going to be faced with, as Jake said. It may not be some large scale event. It could be a smaller event that affects you on a large scale, having internet access or network access or phone access or power and AC and whatever it may go. So it's in a level of engagement, understanding what do you do if, and the planning part of it, the comprehensive planning guide that Jake also mentioned that's great. But if no one knows what to do as relates to those plans that are in place, that's important too. It's a level of engagement. Let them know these plans are here. This is what they say. This is why they say it. And this is what we're supposed to do if something was to happen. And it's a level of consistency that really brings whether or not it works or not, because you put a plan in place, and just as well as I do, you put a plan, looks good on paper, and then you go to interact and actually enact that plan, and it doesn't work because so being able to reestablish those protocols and those procedures is important. But it brings it back to getting them, and when I say them, staff, faculty, employees at any level, to really understand why it's important for them to understand, why it's good for them to engage and to train and to know these things, because ultimately it brings back to accountability. Like people in your classroom, it's easier, as Jake said, when you got them in the classroom, they own that classroom because that's them for the entire semester or the year. And there's a little bit more ownership there versus in the classroom, and you're only there for a few hours a week teaching a class. But your ownership and accountability of the people that's in your classroom, and the responsibility to know that their safety is now your responsibility. And then what will you do in an emergency or an event that takes place is truly affected by your level of knowledge and your level of training. And I've said this over again, some people disagree with me, but ultimately people don't rise to the occasion. They fall to their highest level of training. Yeah. And if we're not providing that training, then we're doing a disservice.
I had a professor one time tell me that the safety of his students, the students in the classroom, weren't his responsibility. That was campus safety's responsibility.
I've heard that as well.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's a pretty bold statement. Jake, going back to that same question when it comes to K through 12, and I think more with the, say, K through 6, which it seems to be, even though they have their students a little bit more trained, I think sometimes the faculty and staff need to have more training at that K through 6 because the kids are a little less responsible, maybe even K through 8.
And that's a very effective way to look at it, to break it up by the stakeholder group. and understand, especially at the K through 12 level, going away from community college into the K through 12 education sector, looking at K through 6 and thinking about, let's dive even deeper. Let's look at access and functional needs. So now you have, not only do you have K through 12 kids that are in a K through 12 classroom, they have an access and functional need. And so how do you plan for that? And that's one of the things that you saw in the Ovade incident, is that you saw that the last ones to come out were the access and functional need kids. Why? Because it's a lot more work for them to consider them. Now, if you had planned a little bit more appropriately and really thought about how do we integrate access and functional needs into our planning process, how much more effective would we have been with getting that vulnerable population out of the building first? So it's really just about understanding, do you have the right stakeholder group when you are planning and you are preparing? Really realizing what your needs are as an organization, because they change every day. New students come, students leave. And if you're talking about the teachers and getting them on board with preparedness and getting them involved, it really starts with the teachers and helping them to understand what preparedness looks like. And a lot of them, there's not a single teacher that I can think of in my head, and I know quite a few, that I would go up to and say, hey, do you care about preparedness in your classroom? Every single one of them is going to say yes. They're just going to say yes. Why? Because it's true. And they do. They would pass a lie detector test if you ask them. The problem isn't that they don't understand what it takes. They don't understand what preparedness to them is. It's not that they don't want to be prepared. It's that they don't have a standard of what preparedness is in their school. And so really, from a top level, an administrative level, having an understanding of what preparedness is, and that comes from all the way from the federal government, all the way down to the classroom and everything in between, having a clear understanding of what a prepared school looks like. And
I'll expand upon that, Jake, and I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to jump in here for a second, because you're right. We talk about preparedness, and I think it's a problem when we talk about the cultural preparedness in the global scheme of things. You ask people, are they prepared? They go, yeah, I have a 72-hour kit that I bought from Home Depot or whatever. And it has food, those little cookies, it has water, those little water packets, and it says it's good for 72 hours. Well, that's not really preparedness. That's a step in the right direction. But is that really what we're talking about when we're talking about a cultural preparedness? And then I'm going to twist this a little bit here on this question, is the reason why I separate the high school and maybe even 8th grade away from the lower grades is because there's programs for 8th graders on with the Teen Cert program that schools can participate in. There's clubs that have been, the Red Cross Club is another good example that's at the high schools. Remember, that was a big thing when I was a kid. I've seen them around here at colleges as well, the Red Cross clubs. So there's opportunities for students and faculty and staff to engage in those preparedness programs for for the higher education and kids that are older. Not a lot of stuff that's out there for the K through 6, if you will. But there is a program we'll come back and talk about, Jake, here a little bit, the one that your daughter participated in. But I think defining what preparedness is and taking a look at those programs like the CERT program or the campus CERT programs, Teen Cert, Campus CERT, does that help out with the definition of what preparedness is? And is that what we should be striving for with not only just in our communities at the schools, but also for communities in general?
I'd like to point out something that people often forget about, and I think it's important when we're having conversations like this to point out that the majority of school districts in the state of California are small, 2,500 or less. You have some schools, especially the ones that are up there being affected by fires right now, that have 10 kids in the entire school. So you're talking about, you want to do a Teen Cert program with 10 kids in the entire school. Sounds great. And I'm sure it would be a great program if they concentrated on it. But when you have a superintendent who is the principal, who's the janitor, and also the one that drives the bus, now you're talking about somebody who's already spread thin. So it's really hard to look at it at that context and say, through the context of what's right for everybody, because I can tell you in this state, there is no right thing for everyone. It's really, how do we develop tools to be able to serve different populations, to help people identify what their need is, to teach them how to determine what their threat is, to help and show them what preparedness for them looks like, and provide technical assistance as they're working through that process. over 10,000 schools in the state of California. Me and one other guy at the California Department of Education, 58 county offices of education. So when you're talking disaster management structure in the state of California, the span of control is widely off. And so understanding that we can't be all things to all people at all times, but what we can do is we can start developing tools and processes in order to help them. The school's emergency reporting system is a brand new system you can check out on the Department of Education's website that we've developed. We are currently working on our own emergency operations plan for the California Department of Education. We have developed a department operations center to help coordinate information and resources up and down the levels of the standardized emergency management system. We're doing a lot for two people right now, but I think thinking about that context that you're talking about, is it Teen Cert? Is it a school resource officer? Is it a gate that locks on both sides? What tool is it? I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think it's really important that we take a step back and look at what's going to be right for each of those K through 12 education entities. And some schools have all. They have everyone from pre-K to high school or to senior in high school and everything in between.
No, you're absolutely correct, Jake.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that too. And you're 100%, but I think also we get tied up in, Todd, and this is to your comment, we get tied up into CERT. And there are some preparedness parts of CERT, but that's a response to training to respond to what we do and help people and evacuate people and use fire extinguishers. And that's all great. It really is. I'm a CERT trainer. I highly value that. But it's a consistent level of preparedness overall on what we do in the case of an event. It doesn't have to be a CERT program that teaches you how to respond and put on a hat and go search for victims or go use a fire extinguisher or go help carry somebody out. And it's a level of understanding to what level you will need to respond if something was to happen. And I want to really tie in something that is really important that a lot of people don't really take the time to understand. And Jake hit this really well. And I want to thank him for bringing it up, was access and functional needs. Access and functional needs doesn't mean you have a disability. It doesn't mean you have a limitation physically. And you add that on top of what I'm about to tell you. And yeah, that could contribute. But when it comes to K through 6, especially K through 4, they are heavily reliant on their teacher to tell them what to do because they don't know. Yeah. They are access and functional need. They look to you for what to do next. And that's important to understand. And from the research that I've done with access and functional need, at some point in our lives, every single one of us falls into that access and functional need because we were babies at one point, and then we're going to be elderly. We fall into access and functional needs because we have limitations on us. And we may not be able to do things like everybody else. But when it comes to children, they're 100% reliant on that teacher to tell them what to do next. And that's a huge part of how we prepare and train and drill and plan. And thank you, Jake, for bringing that up, because it's not just a limitation. If they're in a wheelchair, or if they have other limitation like blindness or deafness or whatever it is, fill in the blank. That's in addition to things we need to plan for. But also understanding that they may be temporary too, and you have not planned for it. A student breaks their leg and you didn't plan for an access and functional needs student. They could be in a wheelchair or on crutches, or an employee who is in a wheelchair or on crutches, or whatever reason is a temporary. Are you planning for that? And knowing that you break your foot and you can't get out as quickly, are you going to need help in an evacuation? These are things you got to plan for too, because it may not be something that is relevant at the time of your planning, but it's definitely relevant at the time the event took place. So these are why it's so important that we have a level of consistency. And it's not just about how we respond to things. It's how we guide and interact and direct others to do the things that need to be done. And I just thought that was important to point out.
Absolutely. So when we take a look at these programs, and since we're talking about education specifically, at what level should we start doing training? And I know that people are like, oh, you shouldn't scare the kids or whatever. And just before, when we're in the green room, before we started the webinar, we're talking about when I was a kid back in the 70s and 80s, up and probably till 82, we were still doing duck and cover drills for nuclear weapons being dropped off. It was something that was part of what we did, and it wasn't scary necessarily. We just did it. We'd go out in the hallway and go into the little ball and put our books over our head. What age, and then Jake, I'm going to go to you on this one. What age should we start doing preparedness training and education? And then I know that the state of California has a program that starts in the fourth grade. I went through a training on this. So it was the fourth grade. And they said the fourth grade because that's where they can understand what's going on and participate and absorb the lessons being taught. And I know your daughter went through that program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the tee up there for Preparedness Ambassadors. It's a wonderful program put together by Lynn Olson and her team over at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. They did a great job putting that program together. My daughter was one of the first classes to go through it because I really wanted to see it in action as I'm going out there and shopping it around to the world. And I can tell you without a doubt, her class absolutely enjoyed it. It really focuses on creating a culture of preparedness in the fourth grade and helping the kids to become ambassadors for preparedness for their communities. And she did a great job looking at different disasters that have happened in our region. And then at the end, we finished up with a virtual tour of the State Operations Center. And it was just a great opportunity to see that in action. And yeah, when they designed the curriculum, they did design it around that concept of fourth grade being a great time for that. Also fits into the curriculum that they teach in fourth grade. And so and as far as how you access that, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services has a link on their website. If you type in schools disasters California, you can go to the Department of Education's website. Just type schools disasters California in Google. It'll be the first thing that pops up. And then we have that link directly at the top, one of the top links on our website for you to go check out. And as far as when is a good time to start, I don't think it's too early. Fire drills happen for the kindergartners. They happen for everybody. And a fire drill is a form of preparedness. Granted, we take that fire drill for what it is because it's specific to a fire starting in the school and everybody lines up and they grab the bucket and they go out. But that concept of being regulated, having that, okay, something happens. There's an action there's a call to action here. What is it? And understanding that when something happens, that there needs to be a response. And that's the time that students get to really understand that we're in our bubble here, our little safety, our safe land of comfort, but there is our external forces that we have to consider. And there's not really a good answer for that. And one of the things that I did with my kids when they were young is I asked them, okay, if there was a fire right now, what would you do? And just see what their response is. And when they were young, my daughter told me, she said, well, I would run outside. And I was like, that's a good response. Yeah, okay. I can see the wheels turning there. And then I would ask her, is there anything you think you should have done before the fire? She said, I wish I would have had new or this toy, where Kevin, my koala was, and everything else. And so that kind of concept of having that discussion, I don't think it's ever too early to start that conversation. We don't want to scare children. We don't want to pop out from behind a door and say, I'm the earthquake, and scare them or something. Like, that's not going to be effective. You want to do it through the lens of being helpful to these children. And so I think putting it, and that's why it's so important to put it in the hands of the teachers, man. So important because they know the kids. They know Tommy just moved here from Trinity County, and he came because his house burnt down. Probably should consider that before doing a fire drill.
Yeah.
Or to know that little Stevie over here just moved from Texas, and his cousin got shot in the Olade incident. Probably should be something that you should consider. And that's why these things should never be done in a box. It shouldn't be like flipping a light switch. You should be doing a lot of consideration around these things. And if you do it in that way, and being thoughtful about your community, about being thoughtful about the people that are in the classrooms, is a fire drill effective for us? But maybe there should be some other drill that we're worried about because there's a giant mountain behind us that burned last year. We may have a rock slide. Maybe we should be doing a rock slide drill. Like thinking, what is the most appropriate thing for us in our preparedness right now?
Before I go to Dan, because I have a question specifically tailored on this one. Don't forget, if you guys have any questions, please, in the Q&A, please put questions in there. We're more than happy to take those questions from you all. And then if you have any logistic issues, you can put that in chat as well. So Dan, as Jake talks about going through K-12 and doing the fire drills and things like this, like what happens to us, like after 12th grade, right? And a fire alarm goes off and people don't react. And I'll tell you a story. I'm going to pick on a friend of mine. I was at his office. A fire alarm starts going off, And I'm like, dude, do you think we should evacuate? He's like, no, he goes, I don't smell any smoke or anything like that. And then a couple seconds later, somebody comes running into the office, says, there's a fire on the third floor. We all have to evacuate. Like, why don't we hear the fire alarm now and leave? Why are we desensitized to that? And what do we do? Because this happens happens at college all the time. Fire alarm goes off, wait until somebody comes, knocks on the door, says evacuate.
Well, that's one of the reasons why, is that it happens so often, usually a false alarm, that people become desensitized to it and they don't want to respond in an appropriate manner. And more than that, it happens so often, they're like, they don't want to believe that it's real. We have that mental part of our mentality, everybody, is that they don't want to believe that the bad thing is happening. And as the older we get, the more we establish that in ourselves. And that's what you hear a lot with the active shooter after the after action was, we thought it was fireworks. We thought it was a car backfiring. They didn't want to believe that it was gunshots that led them to actually respond as an active shooter event. Just as a fire alarm happens, we don't want to believe that the building's on fire. More than that, though, it happens so often, as you mentioned, that it's a false alarm. I'll just wait until somebody comes and tells me or checks on me and lets me know if it's real or not. And that's one of the things you got to overcome on a regular basis, especially in one of the things that is we got to take into account when it comes to higher ed, is you're now dealing with adults, whether mentally they're there or maturity is there or not. At 18, they're adults, or they could be 17 and they could have signed off and saying that they're now adults. So the decisions they make based on that, they can make those decisions. And it's the accountability aspect of things too is important, because as adults, they may say, okay, something may happen, and then they just leave the campus. And how do we take accountability if they're like, oh, something happened, we're leaving? Were they even there to begin with? That type of thing. So it's a mentality that we have to overcome. It's ultimately one of those things that we don't want to believe the bad thing is happening, whatever it is. Even with a large storm, you hear about. I'm from Oklahoma, and I go back to Oklahoma quite often, and tornadoes come through, and they're like, "What's never hit before, or it's never been this bad," or you hear those send their family to the shelter, but they'll go home and sit because it's never happened. Just like Hurricane Katrina, right? It never flooded before, never got that bad before, so they didn't leave. Those are the things that we try and justify it to ourselves, and ultimately it leads to bad things happening. Because it's that one time that it was real, and that one time that it was real is when people. So it's trying to overcome that on a regular basis, even if during drills and so forth, you got to walk into the building and tell people get out. And I have to do that quite often, to be honest with you.
It's funny you say that about not being ready, because there's a bunch of people right now today that are stuck up on top of Mount Baldy, not on top, but at the restaurant level, because they took the tram up to that area and they're not physically, I guess, to walk back down the mountain, and the tram broke because of flash flood came. So now they're like, oh, there's people stuck on that spot. They can walk, like realistically, they can walk down the trail. Is it hard? No, yeah. But what kind of shoes are they wearing? Do they have water? All sorts of stuff that people don't think to consider going to a place like Mount Baldy when you're going to go to lunch by taking the tram up. It's a nice ride and it's pretty high up there. But yeah, so there's things like this. So we don't mentally prepare anymore for these events. And I want to transition a little bit here into now. Dan, you use the Titan HST product, and Jake, you familiar with mass notification systems and things like this. That's the other side of it too, is we're having people that like either don't want to download the app, they don't sign up for mass notification, and then how do we communicate with people? And I'll tell the story, you've probably heard it before if you listen to me, that when I was working for the city of Dana Point, every year we had a disaster drill. There's 3 cities for the nuclear power plant, and we've set these sirens up, and people are supposed to tune into the radio station for more information, and we're supposed to put mass notification stuff out, and people still were confused about what it meant and what it goes. We put lots of effort and time into putting this information out in the newspaper, on the radio, direct mailers, all the stuff to get people to understand what we're doing. Why don't people pay attention to those things, to those mass notification that we do, or to all the stuff that we push out? How do we get them to take that stuff seriously and sign up for programs? And I'll start with Dan.
Again, it's a level of what the marketing that we put behind it to say why it's beneficial to them. That's how social media works now, is that if the algorithm is set to say, okay, they spend a little bit of time on this photo, or they looked at this link, or they like this person's post or this event's post. So it shows you more of that. We need to be that way when it comes to emergency management. And it needs to be to the point to where we get their attention long enough for them to say, huh. And by doing that, they see more of it, and they see more of us, and they see more why it's beneficial. and they see more how they can get involved and how it benefits them. And we don't do enough of that in emergency management. We know it's good for them, and we put these tools in place. We don't spend enough time saying this is why it's important for you and this is how it benefits you, because we do what we like. And if we don't feel like if there's no interest there and we don't like it, we don't do more of it, or we'll scroll past it, or we'll ignore the email or silence the text or the phone call. And we need to really market to them and educate them in a way that says, this is why it's important, this is how it benefits you, and this is what each of these things look like. When you have a messaging system like Titan or any of the other ones that are out there, and they have email and text and the computer monitor or the landline, and understanding what modes you're going to utilize in an emergency and why it's important for them to know that. And understanding that if the phone goes off and it's this alert, or it comes from this number, or it comes from this platform, or this email address, this is why it's important that you open it, look at it, scroll it. It is on us, because just like I said, and when our attention span keep going down, and it's not that we don't have attention span, it's that we are used to the scroll, and what we stop on is what we get more of. We need to make it so that they stop on us more, that they slow down just a little bit more to say, huh. And by doing that, we will get more in front of them. But it's an effort that we take to market that. Not just social media, it's emails, it's paper media, it's events, it's making it known and doing all these different things to target your audience. But what's really important there is understanding what your market is, because I don't know, you got to think about market. I've been studying it for about a year and a half now. I'm getting really proficient in the market aspects. I feel it's important. But as any market goes, the market doesn't go to the people. The people don't go to the market unless you say, I have to go to where they are. I have to know where my market is at, where they're at, and then I have to go to them and show.
So how do you do that? How do you do that at the higher education level? You have a captive audience, if you will. Obviously you can't force them to download the app onto their phone. The faculty and staff, you told me before that there's some pushback from them because they felt that there was like monitoring going on, which things like this. Like, what did you do to get over that hump to get people to participate in the program?
You just got to educate. Ultimately, it's overcoming rumors, it's overcoming false information. And the hesitations that they have, it's ultimately due to misunderstandings or not being confused about a product or being confused about a policy or procedure. And one of the things that I've learned the most is a confused mind always says, so you have to overcome that confusion. You have to be very clear in your communication. You have to be very clear in why it works and how it works and what it's doing when it does work, so that they understand there's no miscommunication that says, well, I heard this. No, you overcome that. You have to sell yourself. It's marketing. You have to let people know why it's important to them and how to overcome the objection that they're going to have. And there are going to be objections, whether they are relevant or not, whether they are one of those, and I say relevant or not, meaning they could have an objection that's completely like far-fetched, it has nothing to do with it, but that's something that they heard 10 spots ago that relates to what you're talking to them about right now. And you have to overcome that. And overcoming that is letting them know why it benefits them and how it's going to work when it works. And so that they know this is how I'm going to communicate to you. This is the communications I'm going to be sending out. This is why it's important that you look at them when I send them. And this is what you need to, you know how to respond based on the situation in which we're in. It's a level of our engagement, and it's constantly answering questions and overcoming those objections. And the way we do that is with information and education and training. And the more we do that, the easier it gets. It starts off difficult, especially if you're new and you're coming into a culture that's already established, and then you're having to build trust, and and it's one of those things. So it's as long as there's consistency there and you're truly acting on the benefit of those you're there to serve, you'll get there, but it may just take a little longer. But it's the actual act of continual engagement and educating them on why it's important and how it benefits them. It's not about me at that point. It's about them. Now I'm of service to my district and my community, and they need to know that. And then everything I do benefits them. And if I'm not getting that point across, what steps do I need to do to pivot, to switch, to change my approach in order to reach the audience? And it changes based on what audience you're going after, because students are different than faculty and staff, because I can sit down faculty and staff on a required training that they have to go to. Students, how do you get them that involved when they don't have to do it? And it's a level of what kind of incentives do you have? And we have incentives, like I have incentives. If you do this, you can go get XYZ. Maybe that's $20 at Starbucks. Maybe that's Hartnell Garb at this bookstore. Maybe something else. But what is it that gives them incentive to say, okay, I'll take just a minute see what you're saying, and complete a task. And that may be downloading the app, signing up. If you download this app, sign up, we'll get you a $20 gift card to Starbucks. Hey, it's a bribe, but it worked.
Right.
And what are you doing to engage and incentivize the group in which you're supposed to be serving?
And Jacob, I want to give that back to you as well. I've had the opportunity to work with schools, K through 12, and establishing some programs for mass notification. They're Titan customers, and then, but on your end of it, like what I've seen is like the kindergarten or the primary schools, if you will, the teachers were more apt to want to participate in the process. And then when you got to the K through or through the 9th through 12th grades, the schools were hesitant to allow students to participate in the program, which I really think is short-sighted a little bit, but it's their program. I'm not going to tell them what to do. What do you think of both? Do you think that students should participate, the 9 through 12 should participate in the mass notification systems, or should that still just be for teachers and parents to get this information?
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? It's the oldest problem and the most emerging issue in emergency management is communication, and how that's changing and developing amongst the new generations that are coming up, because they don't talk like we do, they don't communicate like we do. It's different. So I guess my answer to that would, I hate to be coming back to this, but it's really a case by case basis. And each school and their climate, where if they're having difficulty with apps in their school, they see an app as a problem. They don't see it as a solution. And so I think it's probably coming from that angle. If you're getting pushback from administration on, hey, we want this system, but we don't want to deploy it to our high schoolers, there's probably a reason for that. And I think maybe asking the question of, okay, what are the key elements of information that you can give me regarding the risk that you feel that poses? Because really, it's when you look at taking any action in preparedness, you look at how in the determination of tasks that I could do, which one of these tasks is going to yield the most mitigation of risk? What is the most risk mitigating factor? Not having the app or having the app? Let's look at each of those actions in preparedness and figure out which one is going to be more successful for the outcome for our school. I speak from experience when I say that, having had just lost a daughter in the last 2 months to an opioid overdose, that she had obtained fentanyl from a school friend through an app. There is risk in apps. And so I would imagine that you would get some pushback from that. I think the question is, how do we break through that? And that's a case by case basis. And really reaching out, and if you're having trouble, let's say the decision is, let's go ahead and give it to the kids. Let's make sure that we get them on the app whenever we can. Okay, if you're going to do that, then there's going to be large scale distrust between the students and the teachers. And some schools there's not. Some schools are going to be like, we love our teachers. There's a great relationship here. That's not every school. In some schools, you're going to get pushback, and it's going to be that we don't really trust the administration. We're worried that they're spying on the rest of our apps or whatever. You're going to have to approach that from a place of, okay, let me talk to who the people are that are the influencers within this culture and try to bring them in the room and have a conversation with them about it. And I hate to lean on that Lord of the Flies concept, where it's this whole culture that's running itself in a school. It's not like that, not in most schools anyway, where administrations really do a great job of tapping into the culture and knowing who those thought leaders are within their K through 12 education environment. But school climate is a really detailed process. And I know people who they dedicate their life to understanding and developing school climate. And it's a discipline unto its own. And so I think really understanding your school climate, understanding, is this the right decision to get kids to download the app? And if they do download it, who are the ones that are out there telling people about it? Are they the right messengers? And are we messaging it the right way? Sorry to make it so complicated, but that's my answer.
Oh, no, it's not. And it leads me into the next portion of this conversation, that Alyssa's Law was just passed in New York, just signed by the governor. And Alyssa's Law, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it comes from the Stoneman shooting in Florida, where one of the students who passed, her name was Alyssa, and her mom went through and said, hey, we need to have wearable or portable panic buttons. And specifically in the law, it states that. And it's in New Jersey, Florida, New York, Nebraska. The federal government's looking at passing some. Arizona, Texas, Virginia, and are places that have the law or are looking at passing the law with this year. How do laws such as Alyssa's law, and then Dan, in your case, Cleary, that kind of put these regulations into place and requirements, how do they play into decisions that are being made at the school level and in that essence? And I'll start with Jake first, and then we'll go to Dan.
Yeah, I think that's a consideration for each individual state as it's being unrolled, because not every state is the same with their education code, and California education code is very unique. I'm not sure how a law like that would impact schools and requiring people to wear pendants and things like that. And again, I don't know if that's the right answer for every school. I think that really taking that back and thinking about if you have one teacher, 12 students in a school, having a panic button there, is that the right thing to do for that school? And really considering what is the cost associated with that? What are the factors? What are the systems that is that linked to? Is it tied into the regional threat assessment centers, to the state threat assessment center, to following any reporting requirements? There's a lot of questions that come into mind for me when we talk about implementing something like Alyssa's law in the state of California. Generally speaking, I've heard of successes and I've heard of difficulties in other states around Alyssa's law. And just like any other law, there's good parts to it and there's bad parts to it. I think that before we implement something like that in the state of California, if we ever do, it would really take time to talk to the people it's going to affect on the ground and ensure that any comprehensive legislation that's passed in the state is done with the consideration of the stakeholders, which are our teachers, are the ones that have to wear the pendant. And with that, I yield the floor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jake. Dan, there's a question that came in for you specifically. I'm not sure, the anonymous attendee put it in. It says, Dan Scott mentions engagement, consistency, and level of training as the key contributing factors to the culture of preparedness. Then the question is, realistically, there's parts to this, but to put it all together is like, how do we measure it? How do you identify for disengaged and engaged students and teachers? How do we understand if the efforts are being consistent at the school? What level of training contributes to the higher culture of preparedness? And what matrix do you use to grade? I like that, the culture of preparedness. So in general, what we're looking at is like, how do you measure this? How do you know it's effective? And then like that, like just why don't we just go with that as the combining all that together?
Overall, it's effective by the higher number of those who engage in the process. And it's done, to give an idea, it's a very strategic process, and it has to be done in a way that, and this is the way I teach everything, and especially because it has to be done slowly. You don't go straight to a full scale functional exercise. So it's a crawl, walk, run. You start small, and you get your level of engagement, whether it's a small preparedness training, whether it's an active shooter relevant webinar, whether it's a small drill that takes place. It could be simple as doing first aid CPR training, but a level of evacuation and shelter in place training. It's got to be done. You do it small and you build on that, and you do it in such a way, but it's got to be very strategic, and it's got to be very relevant. If we're in California, odds are I'm not going to be doing tornado training. So it's got to be very relevant to where they are. And so if you're in certain areas, you may not be doing hurricane training or whatever. So just make it relevant. Start small and then build from that. If you do a course, or if you do a training, or whatever, however you do it, and you get 5 or 10 people, great, amazing. You got to turn those 5 or 10 people into advocates for you and partners. And this is one of the things I've been preaching a lot of lately. And it's something I've just recently really started to comprehend. To show you my weaknesses here, is that we talk a lot in emergency management, public safety, about buy-in. We need buy-in, especially at higher levels. And I saw that someone mentioned those in senior management. There's a difference between buy-in and ownership. So if I go to my senior management and I say, this is what I'd like to do, and they say, okay, we'll let you do that. That's buy-in. Ownership is we'll let you do it, and we're going to help you do it. So it's strategic, and you have to do it in such a way that you gain advocates. You gain partners in the process. You're not just saying, I'm doing this thing, because it's great if I'm doing it, but it's even better if you have other people supporting what you're doing, helping you do it, and building each time gets better. We do after action reviews and after action hot washes and whatever. So what it is when we do these things, that we understand, okay, this is what we did, it went great. This is things we can do better on, and then go do better on them. It's very strategic. And we got to change how we do things, because a lot of how our mind thinks when it comes to this type of work is very tactical.
Mm.
And we have to be strategic when it comes to how we apply the tactics that we use. And it may not always be us doing it. We may need others to influence the process. But a lot of what we're doing, what we're talking about today, especially about preparedness and training, and it comes from influence, and influence comes from trust. So we have to build that level of trust. But how do you build trust? Consistent effort. Yeah, I just can't walk in and say, trust me. I have to build that relationship. I have to build that trust. And the more I do it, and the more you believe what I'm doing, and the more that you believe that I say what I do, and the more authentic I am in the way I do it, the more trust I build, and the more you can build a program. But the consistency level, I mean, if you do one drill a year, there's no consistency there. There's no engagement. So how often are you training in order to prepare and do those exercises, those drills, those trainings? How often are you doing them? How often do you do a walkthrough with someone's department? How often do you sit individuals down and see where their fears are or what's relevant to them? You may be speaking about something and they're fearful of something else. How do you address that? How do you gain that information? And it's through communication, and it's consistent communication, and it's done strategically. You can't just walk in the office and say, trust me, I'm here to train you, and do it. No, you have to build a level. Why do I trust you? And that comes from building that level of strategy, but it comes from being able to do it slowly in the crawl, walk, run method. You don't want to just start running and wait until something bad happens before you start training. And what we see is one of the biggest trends, especially when it comes to what we do. As soon as something bad happens on the news, that's when people want to see it. So take advantage of that. It's terrible to say, take advantage of a bad situation that's happening, but that's when it's in people's mind. So how do you make it relevant to the situation? Because you're going to get more involvement, because it's going to be relevant to them in that moment.
Jake, last question. What programs are you working on right now?
Right now, we're working on, and thank you for that. And that was a great answer, Dan. We certainly see on that, and I appreciate it. Right now, currently, we're working on a couple things. Really exciting stuff that we're doing is really developing out, like 30,000 foot, developing out a disaster management structure here in the state of California for K through 12 education. There really hasn't been anything carved out before, not because nobody cared. It's just because it was a culture thing. And so right now we're focusing on shifting the culture of emergency management in K through 12 education. I don't think there's anybody who's going to argue with me over the fact that emergency management in K through 12 education is the emerging emergency management discipline right now. It's growing. You're seeing positions being added almost daily. You're seeing people hiring new risk managers, emergency managers. So how do we support that process of people transitioning their culture into emergency management? And that's really, one is getting our own house in shape, developing an emergency operations plan for our department, working on that process, partnering with all of our other state agency partners at Cal OES, at Department of Social Services, Department of Public Health, in helping us to make that process get better. And really helping to work with our partners at CSESA, at Small School Districts Association, CASBO, CAPSO for private schools. There's a lot of different organizations that we're partnering with to do that. We're also developing out the schools emergency reporting system, which you can find on our California Department of Education website. And that's a system that allows schools to report what their impacts are for disasters, how they communicate with us. It's an in-house developed program that we're trying to really broaden and develop out in its next iteration. And then training is an important piece. We want to partner with the California Specialized Training Institute to develop a program specifically for emergency managers in K through 12 education, develop a certificate program. And of course, we're trying to get out there and share our message as much as we can. So if anybody's got any opportunity for me to share about what the Department of Education is doing and how important emergency management in schools, I'm all ears, especially something as cool and as authentic as this program with you, Todd DeVoe.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, we're coming close to the end. We're at the end. We have 1 minute left. I want to thank everybody who participated today, who were here with us. And also, of course, Dan and Jake, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your insights and information. If anybody would like more information about Titan HST, please visit us at titanhst.com. And don't forget, next month in September, we'll be doing a webinar on National Preparedness Month. I have a special guest that will be coming. We'll announce him in a little bit. I have a special guest coming on that. We're making sure that his date is definitely clear before we announce the date or the guest. So that will be the second Tuesday of September. So until next time, everybody, please stay safe and stay prepared.